This video we will cover the functions of the StimTroller on the Sirra Summit EMG system. I'm going to be going over the basic functions of it as well as the workflow that it's designed for. The StimTroller can be held in different ways. I like to hold it like this and either control the knobs with my thumb or my index finger. You may want to hold it more like a pencil, or you may not want to hold it at all. You may want to replace the probes. So if you see the probes here, I can actually pull them out and I can either put them closer together for different distances, or I can pull both probes out all together and plug in any other type of stimulator that I want to stim with, whether it's a bar electrode, ring electrodes, any other type of touch-proof connection can plug in there. And I just want to make sure I match my cathode up with the light. The light is designated my cathode. The plus-minus button adjusts that cathode from side to side. So if you'd prefer not to hold this at all, you can just use this as a remote control and have this close to your patient, and then hold the bar electrode or ring electrode or whatever other type of stimulator you want in your hand, and this just gives you a lot of the functions from the base unit very close to the patient. I'm going to do this workflow holding the stimulator because that's the typical way that I would do this test. So I'm going to just put the probes in where I want them. The side button allows you to lock the angle of the probes into 4 different positions. So I can just hold that down and lock those angles into different positions. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick my polarity. So I've got the cathode set here. And I'm going to walk through just the workflow of the nerve conduction test so you can see how we've set up this probe. There's actually 3 programmable buttons on the probe, and I'll show you how those work, as well as you have your angle button and you have your polarity switch. So on the probe I have stim, which is how we deliver an electrical stimulation. I have the wheel to adjust the intensity or other parameters, and I have a store button, which is how you hold that trace and trace down. So stim, adjust the wheel, and then store. And then I also have buttons labeled 1, 2, and 3. Those buttons can be programmed to do whatever you want them to do. So if you look at the top of your screen here, you can see that what stim 1, stim 2, and stim 3 are set for. If you don't see this bar, you can right click and make sure that you have your stimulator controls shown. So this bar not only shows me what they do, it allows me to change what those buttons do. So I can program those buttons to do a variety of different things, whatever works for my workflow. I'm going to go over with kind of some basic settings that we typically have these buttons set for, just to show you the workflow. In my study window, I've selected a study that was preset with certain nerves in the order that I would typically test them, again to help with workflow and accuracy. So I'm starting with the median motor, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust and hold my stimulator how I want to hold it. I'm going to increase the intensity so I get a response that I like. Once I get a response that I like, I'm going to hit store, which will trace down to the next site. In this case, it's elbow. I'm going to trace in the elbow. And I'm just stimming and then adjusting the trace. And now I like that, and I'm going to go ahead and enter distance at this point. To enter distance, I could enter it from the keyboard, but if I'm away from the base unit of the computer, I have stim 1 set for distance. So I'm just going to push the stim 1 button, and I'm going to turn the dial up to the distance that I measured. Let's just say I measured 22. And then I'm going to hit the stim button again to hold that distance. I'm finished with this test, so now I can go to the stim 2 button to go to the next nerve. If I wanted to change pulse width, you'll notice I have stim 3 set for motor nerves. I have stim 3 set for pulse width, so I could just hit the 3 button. When I hit the 3 button, now when I adjust the knob, it's actually changing my pulse width. And you can see that adjusting at the top of the screen here. Once I set it, it automatically switches back to intensity. So again, I push the 3 button, and now I can change the pulse width. And then once I release it, it goes back to intensity. Now it's adjusting intensity. So then the wheel actually does different things based on what you have the functions of the buttons set up to do. So now I'm going to go to the next nerve, and so I have stim 2 set for next nerve. That's going to take me to the next nerve test in my study window on my right-hand screen. So if I look here, when I hit the 2 button, it takes me right into my F wave. I have the F wave set to keep the intensity where I found the original wrist at, so I can just go ahead and start stimming and store as many F waves as I want. And then if I want to move the cursor, actually with the StimTroller, if I wanted to adjust the cursor, I could just hit Stim 1 because I'd have that set for the common marker. For F waves, I hit Stim 1, and now with the wheel, I can adjust that red cursor back and forth and put it exactly where I want it. And then I'm going to hit the 2 button at the bottom, the very bottom button, to go to the next test. Now I have it set for an ulnar motor, and I can go through that same workflow. I'm going to jump down to a sensory though, so I'm going to hit next nerve, and skip over the F wave and go to median sensory. In sensory nerves, I still have the button set up similarly, except for I have the 3 button set up to do trace history instead of pulse width. And that's just because I tend to change pulse width less with sensories, and I maybe look at trace history more often. So with the sensory nerve, I'm going to increase the intensity to get a response that I like. Once I get the response I like, I'm going to go ahead and store it. If I need to, if that's the only side I want to do, I don't have to store it. But if I want to do multiple sites, I can go ahead and store that and then stim an additional site in the sensory. And now for my distance, again, I can just hit the distance button, which is 1, and then enter my distance. If I didn't want to, or if I wanted to see the trace history, I'm going to hit store, and every time I hit the store button, it takes me from site to site. You'll see that toggling from, so I'm on wrist, elbow, axilla, Erb's point, and then back up to wrist. So that's how I trace through my different site options. If I want to look at my trace history, I can hit this 3 button, because in sensories I've set up this 3 button to be history, and you can see that at the top of the window. So I'm going to hit the 3 button. And now I can see the history, and with my probe, I can go ahead and pick the one that I want to keep. I can just wheel the knob to the response I like the most, and then just store that response. So you can see with the StimTroller, you can actually do a complete nerve conduction without having to touch your base unit. It just makes it a little bit more comfortable and easier to access all the buttons that you need. And again, if this handle is too big, or you prefer to stimulate with any other stimulator, just simply remove the probes and attach the stimulator that you want to use. And again, this can be used as a remote control, and you can set it right next to the patient where you have easy access to all the common controls that you would need for a nerve conduction study. You can also use this probe for EMG. Just so you're aware, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but when you're doing EMG, you'll have, if you want it, you'll have the same stim controls up here at the top. And you can then go ahead and set up these stim buttons to do different things for EMG as well. So if you wanted to play pause or run stop, or you'll see quite a few functions you can set those up for. So again, you can use this as a remote control for EMG as well, so you can have it sitting next to your patient, so that if you're a far distance from the base unit, you can still get your main controls for EMG right here from your stimulator. And that's just a quick explanation of the function of the Sirra Summit StimTroller.